Hi, I'm Russ Segner. We put this series together to feature narrow gauge layouts, seldom seen because they are not located in cities where we normally visit for national narrow gauge conventions. Thanks to the organizing committee of Jerry Cornwell, Pete Smith, Mark Lachey, Dave Adams, and Jeff Schultz. Information on this program is available at nng@groups.io. We hope you will join us. So now for our program. Our speaker this evening is Warren Judge talking to us about creating weathering using dark to light. So Warren, take it away.
Sure. I started out painting military miniatures and then worked my way into military figures. And one of the things that I learned was to use oils as well as acrylics, which I would transfer over the model railroading aspect. One of the things that always surprised me is that, military modeling, everything's static, whereas model railroading, it actually runs. A lot of these techniques I learned from other people and I've kind of developed them myself. First thing is using crafters acrylics to dry brush. I always tell people that when you use crafters acrylics, it's a really good base for your color palette. And dry brushing, if you don't know what that is basically you're getting paint on a brush, you're taking most of the paint off, and what you're doing is you're rubbing against the surface of the model that you're working on just to highlight areas that are raised. The reason why I use oil washes, which is the second aspect of this weathering piece, is that oils have a really good translucent appearance to things, and they dry flat. Believe it or not, they actually have a really good aspect when you have little crevices and little lines you can run. So if you get your oils down pretty well, you're able to get those into the crevices. I use pastel chalks. You don't have to use pastel chalks. You can use weathering chalks. I know Brandon makes a bunch of them. There's all different kinds of chalks that I use, but it's always the last thing that I do. So those are the three things that I start out with. So what I did here is this is a kit that from an Australian company, and what I did is I just did a little bit of modifying to it. And what I'm trying to show you here with the crafters acrylic that I use, the paint has the ability to actually go on the model actually without even priming it. And we'll get into that a little bit more down the road. But this is just some photographs of the model that shows it with the chains and a little bit of added detail that I did to it. There's another view of it right there. I actually did this for a friend of mine, John McKenzie. It's a little logging truck. It's the back with all the chains and everything on it. So it's slightly modified. It's nothing major. Well, the weathering supplies that I use are just cheap Walmart brushes. When I'm painting figures, I use very, very good brushes. Actually, I use a Winsor Newton Series 7. But for this aspect, I'm just using cheap flat Walmart brushes you can get. I think they come like $5 for like 15, 20 brushes. I know when I did a clinic for Mark Lachey, we bought the brushes from them. It was quite inexpensive. A good paper towel, and then just regular tap water. A lot of people ask me if the water has to be a certain kind of water. No, I just use tap water from the sink. There it is right there, the three brushes, small little tissue or some paper towels, and then a little cup that I had that I hold the water in. Now, when you use oil washes, you can buy them at Walmart as well. I mean, just the standard colors that I use for my washes are always the same. They're black, burnt umber, and burnt sienna. And there they are. I've had these colors for 20, 25 years. So oil plants go a long, long way if you use them correctly. You only need a small, like the size of an eraser, on your palette. Final applications, I always use pastels at the end because I think weathering chalks can actually, if you use them correctly, you can scribe into the paints that it's already down there. So that's the last thing that I put on. Again, I'm using black, burnt umber, burnt sienna. And then for this application, I'm using the base color. So what I'll do is I'll actually use the color green as the base color. And then the final application is I mix a little bit of the chalks with the white yellow mixture for the base color. And that just kind of raises up the highlights for it. Here I just use it really simple. I'm trying to help people who may not be able to afford things. It's an old sanding disc that I've had for years. There's some of the chalks that I got down there. And the neat thing about that is that once you put it on this palette, this little sand disc, you can just take the chalk right off with I use an old brush and I just apply it in these highlighted areas. So the sequence we're going to use is I'm going to show you here is that we're going to start from black. And that's the neat thing about the color black is it's the darkest color in the wheel spectrum. And as you progressively come lighter, what that does, it actually brings out the depth of the model. So the colors I have here are black, burnt umber, burnt sienna, the base color, yellow brown, and antique yellow. So these are all going to go in the sequence of what they actually are. And we're actually going to show you that in the pictures. Again, like I said, black is what we want to start out with. There's my beat up palette. I always bring that and show it to people because, you know, some people are really stringent about using tap water, or not tap water, but distilled water. That's my beat up palette. I got about 4 or 5 of those, you know. I just scrape them out and just put the paints in there. So I always kind of use it as an example of, it doesn't have to be too particular, just as long as you can get the paint correctly. There it is right there, Deco Art, best black paint on the market as far as I'm concerned. I use that for all my models. That paint has a consistency and ability to cover over items that haven't even been primed. The beautiful thing about this is it doesn't hide the details. I weathered multiple brass PBL locomotives with this and with a brush. I mean, I have multiple airbrushes I can use for air, and I do use the airbrushes every once in a while, but this paint has a consistency that's able to allow the dry brushing technique to really bring out the ability to show those different layers. And by putting thin layers of this, it actually really allows itself to be built up very nicely. There's the burnt umber that I use, same one from Deco Art. They're $1 a bottle, burnt sienna. There's the dark green that I'm using. That's the color that we use for the base color. And then golden brown, we all know that green has yellow in it if you understand the wheel color. And then the last one is the antique gold. If you notice on the left there, when I get to the base color, I always mix the lighter color of that base color, whatever that hue is. So in this case, it's the yellow. So when once the model is painted with green, I go with the 50-50 mix of that color, that gold. And then once I'm done with that, I add the lightest of the color, which is 25% to that color. And that creates what they call the highest highlight. You go back one there. Yeah, there you go. There's the truck right there with the trailer on the back of it. It's completely painted in that black right there. And the ratio that I use when I paint it is 30% water, 70% paint. It's pretty simple. There it is right there with the first application of the burnt umber. What I'm doing with that is I'm going over the whole model with the burnt umber after it's been painted black. The neat thing is what it's doing is it's giving those dark applications as well as some of that rusty brown that's coming through. There it is again, the other side of it. Again, we're just going over the raised areas. We're trying to keep that dark impression so you still see that depth there. And here it is with the first application of burnt sienna. We have to be careful with burnt sienna. As you all know, burnt sienna is a very, very bright color, and it can really cause a streaking. It could cause that really high contrast, which we're not looking for at this point. So you just do it over certain areas, raised areas. So as you can see, I picked out above the wheel rim, top of the roof, the top of the nose of the truck, around the edges of the frames, inside the wheels. And we're trying to capture that. And what we're doing is we're building those layers up. Here's the other side, same thing. Here's the first application of the green. I used the green right out of the bottle. I didn't dilute it at all. But what I did do is I put on very, very small layers. I probably put 3 or 4 layers on here. And again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the base of the model where the model would, where the color would really stand out. And if you notice, and where all the crevices, where the lines are, where it actually folds in, you want to make sure that you keep that dark there. Okay, because that's really going to make the model pop out. And so what I'm doing is I'm just focusing on the areas of the truck and in the wheels that are really going to stand out as far as the base of the model. There it is, that 50-50 mix. I mixed it with that golden brown. What I'm doing right now is I'm just going over, if you want to look at it from this perspective, I'm actually building like a mountain. What you're kind of doing is you're trying to get in the center of the green now. And I've added that 50-50 mix of the brown and the base color. So now the highlights are really starting to come out a little bit. And you can see that around the wheels as well as inside the frame of where the driver's wheel is, also along the nose of it. So those are really starting to pop out. Once I'm done with that, I add a black wash of the oils over the whole model. It's usually the consistency of milk. So when I'm mixing oil paints, it doesn't take very much, maybe a very small dab of your brush into your palette, and then you mix it with paint thinner, or you can use turpentine, but you want to make sure that it's the consistency of milk. And what I do is I cover the whole model with that. And what that does, it actually fills in any of the creases where I might have gotten the green paint or the base color over an area that I didn't want. I have an old hair dryer that I've had. It's an old Vidal Sassoon that my wife gave me 25 years ago. Thank God it still works. But I use that to speed it up because a lot of times I'm working on multiple models at the same time. And the hair dryer does not only helps it dry quicker, but it also helps it dry with the water base, with the acrylics. So here's the highest highlight, the antique yellow mixed with the 50-50 mix. Along with the burnt umber wash. But really quickly, what I want to touch on here is you want to be really careful with this highlight, because if you go over the areas into the center of the base color, you can lose that depth, and which is what we don't want to do. So this, when you're going over with the base color, you want to go over only on the highest highlights on the model, basically the most raised areas. And that's the one thing that you really want to focus on. If you notice now, you can see a lot of the burnt umber on the nuts and bolts and the chains. So that's what I'm doing with that wash again with the oils. Again, I'm going over various raised areas. You can see it on the nose of it, along where the back of the plate is, where it actually you actually could put a trailer. So what we're trying to do is focus on that. And one of the biggest aspects about this is that we want that depth and that separation of colors, which really makes the model pop out. There it is with the final application of the burnt sienna, and you can really see the colors come out now. Again, I'm using that hair dryer to speed up that process. I'm also putting the burnt sienna under the same area as the burnt umber. One of the things about the burnt sienna, you want to be less, you want to have less of that paint and that wash on there. Otherwise, the burnt umber and burnt sienna will mix together and you'll lose that depth. Really quickly, the nice thing about nuts and bolts is once you have that consistency, you dip your brush in there and you just touch the bolt. You know, I've done 50 bolts at a time in like 2 minutes, you know, because you can just move across the model really quickly. That's the beautiful thing about oil washes. Now that the pastels are applied, on this aspect, I'm actually applying the pastels to the model. So what I've done is I've cut out some wild grapevine. John McKenzie uses that, as well as some of the standard grapevine that he gets in California. To me, there's nothing better than real. I mean, you can tell by the way it looks excellent. Any of the areas that I'm going to be putting pastels, again, it's going to be the same aspect. If you look where the front of the nose is, it's got the burnt black chalk. You can put it up by the stack. You can start going black over your wheels. And what I'm doing there is I'm putting specific locations of the pastels along the chain. We all know if the chain starts to rust and it's been on logs long enough, it's going to start rusting onto the logs. And you're also putting the application of the green pastels. So if you look at the top of the nose, you can see it's almost like a limeish color green. And what we're trying to achieve here is we're trying to allow that pastels to give a little bit more of a softer feel as a harsher feel. And that really blends that wash of the oils along with the pastels. And I love using pastels at the end. If you look at the bottom of the foot, that's where some of that whitish yellow mixture came. So you can see where the paint would have been completely worn off. And this is basically just a stock model, but there's some minor variations. I mean, I do a lot of scratch building, but this is just something I wanted to show what you can do with a simple model like this. And again, use your license here. If you feel like you needed to put pastels here more or less, just use your modeling license. There's the back view of it. You can see the different colors in the back of it along with the stack. where the chains are. I've gone over the chains, you know, and a lot of times too, people ask me where I get my chains. I used to get my chains at Walmart sometimes, and I can just spray them. They're like $1 for like 3 feet, you know. So there's, you know, you can buy chains at the, you know, at the hobby store, and it could cost you $4 or $5. Where I use a lot of these chains, I just get them from Walmart. There's a close-up view of the logs. They look excellent. I use them all the time on the layout. Again, use your license on this. You want to make the object, and we all know this when it comes to model rail, we want realism. And that's the ultimate guide, is to try to make it as realistic as possible. That's why you use your license. You use those areas where you feel, hey, I could put some more depth here. I can put some more highlights here. And that's what we're trying to achieve here. So there's the front of it. You can see some of the really highlights there along the wheels, inside the wheels, along the tip of the nose. Those are all done from the pastels. And the pastels blend really, really good with this paint. They actually adhere to it very well. One of the things that people are concerned about with pastels, if you touch them, you know, you'll get fingerprints. The nice thing about this paint is that it somehow it just absorbs those pastels really, really nice. There's the back view again, the other side of the logs. Again, these are just wild grapevines that I find on the side of the road. Again, use your modeling license here. Like I said, I wanted to show how rust would actually work on logs. It's exactly how it would happen in real life. There's the front of the truck by itself, you know. There's a really close up of it. You know, there's an old saying is if the model looks good really close up, it's going to look great at a distance. I pointed out really quickly on this photograph, if you notice there, one of our own worst critics. If you look down at the bottom there, you can see a little hair stuck to it. One of the things that I caught after the fact. Yep, right there. Well, here's that old question: prime or not the prime? Do I prime models? Absolutely, I do prime models. But the point with this is to show you that you can use paint without priming, especially when it comes to static models. These aren't models that are going to be handled very often. These are just going to be models that we use. So what I got here is I think I paid $1 for this kit. It's just a beat up old little 1/64 scale Bulldozer. The one in the back, I think I paid $6 for, and I primed it. And what I'm trying to show you is the beautifulness of this paint and the way it adheres to models that aren't primed at all. The one in the back was primed, and the one in the front hasn't been primed. So we're going to go through that. There's that model that I primed. I just primed it with a can of a spray paint that I got from Ace Harbor. It's a car primer, and usually car primers are pretty thick. I mean, if you want to get good with the rattling can, you can. I know some of my old modeling buddies there, they did some phenomenal work with armor, and they did a great job. But here we're just trying to prove a point. We're trying to say, hey, do I need to prime this model or don't I need to prime it? Well, we'll find out. There it is right there. There's that consistency I told you about. 30% of water and 70% paint. I'm painting literally right over the model. Now, if you look at the bolts on there, it looks like it's really going to take away the depth. But no, once you put a hair dryer to this and it dries, it'll actually bring out those pieces really, really nice. I usually do 2, 3, sometimes 4 thin layers like this over the whole model. There it is right there. It's primed, unprimed. There it is with the black paint right over it. I didn't lose any of the detail. And it just goes to show you that I didn't need to prime it. A lot of times when I'm building things quickly, I can just go right to this paint, use the hair dryer, and then I move on. There's the model right next to the one that was primed. Basically what I did with the prime model, I just painted the paint just like I did on the one to the left. There's no difference at all in it. I'm not saying you shouldn't prime models at all. No, because I do prime models, you know, but I think the thing is that you don't have to. And a lot of times guys don't have a lot of money to use things. So I'm trying to help out modelers who just want to find out a new technique or something they can use to add to their repertoire. There's the other side of it, exact same thing, both primed. And that's really quickly on this black paint, it has this consistency almost of like a chalky feeling to it, which is really excellent for dry brushing. It just absorbs the paints very, very well. There it is again, first coat on the right, first coat on the left of the burnt umber, no difference at all. Prime model on the right, non-prime model on the left. There it is, actually right here is with the first coat of yellow. It's that I think it's that golden brown. It just goes to show you, you can see how the black is being is changing the color and the depth from there. And that's what's really neat about using this technique. It actually pulls out the highlights and it shows you the depth of the model. And that's what we're trying to get here, is we're trying to go for that depth. Here's a model that I painted black, and this is just shows you these next photographs are just some of the models I've done over the past for other people and for myself as well. But you can show you what the kind of depth you can get with this. There's another view. Getting the wood grains, you can check that out. See all the little wood grains. That's all from oil washes. You can do, you know, you just touch that corner, and the oils just follow the lines and the grooves of the plastic. There's a caboose I did. That's a PBL Sn2 caboose. What I wanted to show is just the amount of washes you can get on there, as well as the pastels. Again, the same principle here. There's two of the Sn2 engines that I did. I model not only Sn3 but Sn2, so I kind of do a lot of major converting actually to Sn2 mechanisms. Freelance, not so much a Sandy River guy or a Gilpin tram, but these models were all hand painted with a brush, every last one of them, and they're all detailed with the exact same technique we use. So you can see the detail you can get out of the models using this technique. There's a number 3 PBL West Side caboose. Spent a lot more detail on the bottom using yellows and whites just to show that beat up look. You've all seen pictures of the West Side Lumber Company and how rickety rackety some of those cabooses were at the end. That was my goal here, is to try to actually, you know, portray that. There's a bulldozer I did for Danny Cryer. That's a little $6 bulldozer. Shows you the little depth you can do. I wired the engine, put a front mesh on there, little flap on the stack up there, put some corrugated metal on the foot areas, detailed it to the max. Really put all different kinds of gear shifts. There's chains on the side. One of the things, again, I'm a critique of my own work. The blade, a friend of mine came up to me and said, "Hey, I'm a bulldozer driver." He goes, "That the front of that wouldn't have been painted yellow. It would have been metal." It's a big oversight on my part, but you know, hey, you always got room to learn, right? There's another view it on the left side here, shows you the same model, and then it shows you the prime model that I did of the same model again that I got for $6. It just shows you the depth that you can get between these colors. Again, use your modeling license. You know, I mean, you can take a toy model and you can do whatever you want with it. You know, it's opened, so you're not limited to what other than your imagination. This is an 0130 model I did, hand painted. Again, actually a scratch built for there. I scratch built my own figures, so I've been sculpting figures for a long time. But this is an 0130 model that I did, all hand painted with the brush. Same technique. There's another 0130 model, not that great of a picture, but again, same principle, same technique. There's another 0130 model. I just want to show you some of the 0130 models that I did, but this is a conversion from an HO kit, but from a gentleman who used to have a company out, I think on the East Coast, but this just goes to show you the depth you can do with some of these. That was probably done about 10 or 15 years ago. Here's a building I did, same technique, completely painted it black, shows you the colors you can get, even the stone on the side. Stone's really good actually when you're doing this technique because it can really bring out multiple colors, including the brick, the wood, the trim. All this is done with acrylics using this technique. This whole thing was painted flat black. I wish I would have taken a picture of it prior to it so you could have seen it and done the steps. It really would have shown that. There's a bulldozer. Actually, I got Danny Cryer bought this one as well. Again, you're not limited to just a static model. Being in armor for many years, you know, I'm very familiar with static grass, so we're using static grass and sculpt mold and weeds and stuff inside there, and that's how a real bulldozer would look. It came out pretty nice, I think. There's another view of it. Again, use your modeling license. You can see the engine. And that's the thing too, is when you're starting to go from different colors, you want to keep that. Like for instance, I kept the engine bay. I only did like 3 or 4 colors in there. And so it really jumps out at you. Whereas the rest of the model is that yellowish ochre color. And then also when you're dry brushing, like the blade, you know, the cylinders there and the hydraulics, you know, those are all dry brushed with the silver paint. And again, washes over all this, over the model. Whoops. I'm gonna go back. Yeah, this is the Sn2 engine, my first Sn2 engine that I was scared to death to chop the thing up. It was an HON3 mechanism that I got from a good friend, Jerry Wilson, who got me into Sn2. But this is what you can do. This photograph was taken by Chris Zigmund, a good friend of mine. But this was all hand painted. It was all done with weathering techniques that I just explained here, and shows you what you can do with the pastels or chalks. And yeah, that was my first Sn2 model. Yes, that's right. What's the old saying is, you can't do anything unless you work on it, right? You got to paint, you got to work, you got to build. That stuff don't build itself. So if anybody has any questions, I'm welcome to answer anything.
Warren, we had a couple questions on the chat group. Brian Osborne said, do you use pan pastels?
No, these were artist pastels that I got probably 25 years ago at an art supply store. But you can use pan pastel, absolutely.
Okay. And I think you covered this, but Phil said, can you talk to brushes that you use?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Again, the brushes that I use are just the Walmart brushes. You can buy like a set of brushes. They have both the flat brushes, which are great for dry brushing, as well as the tip brushes that, you know, that come to a fine point. I believe they're all like yellow or white Talon. But to be specific though, I mean, you can use nicer brushes. I mean, I use like I said, Winsor Newton Series 7 for all my figures. But yeah, you can, those are the brushes I get. I mean, you don't have to spend a lot of money. I mean, we didn't spend a lot of money when we did the seminar for Mark Lachey, you know, and we were able to get everybody brushes. So I see. How do you prep your models? Well, that was one of the points that I was trying to make is that the only time I really prep a model in this, for instance, what I do is I just make sure that all the mold lines are removed. You know, you get some people, you got to scrub your model and wash it in water and stuff like that. Yeah, you can. But on these static models, basically what I'm doing is just removing any of the mold lines or any fine lines that might be on there. Obviously, if your model's dirty, you can wash it, but I don't really prep it. I mean, the thing about it is are you able to get the paint on in the consistency that we just showed you, or do you need to prime it? Another question here, the hand car is a model of the DRGW build. Yes, it is.
Someone asked about, are those Bachmann models, the ON30?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. The two are, the other one's a converted model though.
Mark, I have a question about the, in this particular slide where you've got the green, you're actually putting a wash of green over the model at this point. It's a mixture of the green and as the base color and the other materials. Is that right?
Well, it's not a wash. If you look at this, it's a 50-50 mixture of, on this particular picture, it's where I take the base color of the green and added that golden brown to it. And that's dry brushed. It's not washed.
So you're dry brushing on the surfaces here.
Yep.
Top of the previous coloration.
Yep.
How do you, and again, these paints do not leave brush marks.
No, not at all. They can if you want them to, and sometimes brush marks are actually good on certain models, you know what I'm saying, if you're trying to develop lines.
I've got a question for you. When you put the base color on that black,
yes,
how you dry that with the hair dryer as well, right?
Yeah, like I said, I just do it to speed up the purpose. I mean, the paint in itself, acrylics dry relatively fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I use the hair dryer. I mean, you can use whatever you want, but the hair dryer, and they're pretty cheap. You can get them at the dollar store for like $10.
Yeah. I've got a beat up old hairdryer. I use it when I paint figures. But yeah, I just want to know like the time between the black and then the next coat, so to speak. You hair dryer it and then you hit it. You don't wait like 24 hours or anything, right?
No, no, not at all. I mean, in fact, I painted this model and weathered it in one day. You know,
That's
within like probably
beautiful.
like 5-6 hours. You know,
Mm.
I mean, I took a
Really
couple.
outstanding.
Yeah.
Gorgeous. Thanks.
Thank you, thank you. Really quickly, somebody mentioned up here about the, I believe, the name of the model, and it is a resin model. The shed is actually, yes, it is a resin. Yes, it's Design Tech. They're absolutely. I couldn't remember the name of it.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I sent you some messages in the chat.
Yeah.
So the actual answer is no, I can't get him working. There's two problems.
Really quick, it says, is the green on the cab also Deco art? Yes, it is. It's called emerald green.
Warren, this is Alan.
Hey,
The
Alan, how you doing?
brand of acrylic that you're using, have you, if you go to Walmart, you'll find that brand, Serum Coat, and
Yep.
I think it's Played. But there's several brands. Is there a specific reason you chose the one you did?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Absolutely. Because I tried a bunch of different blacks, and I mean, I got Vallejo paint, scale coat paints. I got tons of different kinds of paints that I use. But when it comes to using Deco art, I've tried so many different blacks, but none of them had the consistency or that texture. That's what I'm looking for, is that texture of black to really give you that flat finish. That's why I said black. As far as I'm concerned, that's the best black on the planet. I mean, I've been using it now for 20 years,
Okay.
and I can't find anything that, even like the chalk, you can find like a chalkboard black, it still doesn't come in the consistency of this paint.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And I'm not paid by them either.
Unfortunately.
Yes, unfortunately. It says right here, is matte finish the flat? Well, the paints are all flat. So I'm not putting any matte finish on it or any dull coat on it. This is directly with the paints. I've used dull coat multiple times on models in the years and have good and horrible results, especially if the paint didn't atomize properly. But no, I don't put a flat finish on it, because that's what you're seeing is the actual paints, the pastels and the oils right there. There's no other matte to it.
Any other questions?
Who carries Deco art paint? Good question. Actually, Walmart does, but they don't really carry that brand specifically. There used to be an old dollar store at my house, and I bought as much of it as I can. But if you go to Deco Art, I think decoart.com, you can actually go ahead. I actually need to buy some more black paint from them. It's $1 a bottle. I mean, it's pretty cheap. So I do not seal the finished models. No, in these particular cases, no, I don't. Because the models aren't going to be handled. The models are display, I'm saying they're static displays. I mean, most of the stuff on our railroads we're not touching, as far as buildings and things like that. No, I don't normally do that. What about the locals? That's a good question. With the locals, sometimes I do. Honestly, the 3 locals that you saw, I did not. And I'll have to send some, if somebody wants, I can send some photographs of some of the Sn2 locomotives that I did. The neat thing about this paint and the way it works, those 2 right there, I did not seal them. And I handled them multiple times. The biggest thing I think everybody worries about is number 1, fingerprints. Number 2 is the paint get a chip off. Well, we all know that paint will chip off on any locomotive, no matter who paints it. Again, there's certain, I don't have to tell you guys, there's certain ways of handling the locomotives, but a lot of times if I'm going to have something that's decaled, yeah, I'll put a clear coat over it just to seal the decals. But remember this though, it's really important when it comes to pastels or chalks. It's something I learned a long time ago in military modeling. Once you spray that coat over it, you can lose that desired effect of the pastels once you start using a clear coat over your models.
Okay. Thank you, Warren.
Sure.
It means that we need to get some of that stuff decorated, painted.
Yes, it does.
We hope you enjoyed this. We look forward to seeing you again. The next session will be posted on the group's IONNG several days before the next program. Look for the link there.